At the South Point studio, here's Jeff Parles and Alex White.
Good morning. Welcome in. Happy Tuesday. It's our Monday on Sports by the Book. Alex, a lot has happened over the last 3 days.
Yes, it has. And I'm just very grateful to have all my teeth today.
It's a Derek White mention for everyone at home. Shockingly, not a hockey mention.
Correct. That is the most surprising thing.
Yeah, I will echo what Alex says. I am also happy to have all my teeth this morning as well. Big show today. We have a lot to get to because a lot happened over the weekend. Bryson DeChambeau wins the U.S. Open. Rory McIlroy with an all-time collapse in the last 4 holes. You have a new NBA champion as well, which we'll get to in our starting 5, and there may be a new Stanley Cup champion coming later today. And we can swoosh it across the screen. There we go, the starting 5 here for today. And, of course, we have to start in South Florida with number 1. The Florida Panthers look to become a Stanley Cup champion for the first time tonight. They had a chance to close it out over the weekend. Yeah, it didn't go well in Game 4. 8-1 Edmonton thrashing of the Panthers. First time we saw bad Bobrovsky in a very long time since Game 1 of the Boston series. Florida, minus 135 favorite to close things out tonight, plus 125 on the take back for Edmonton, and the total at 5.5.
Big thing with these Florida games, especially at home, we have seen a lot of under 7 and 4 to the under throughout this playoffs. Should be a great game, though, with the Panthers trying to close it out here. Number 2, MLB Tuesday, Logan Webb Day for us. He gets to start in the second game of the series against the Cubs. San Francisco won 7-6 yesterday, and that breaks the Cubs' 9-game under streak they had going. Justin Steele will get the start for Chicago. It's about a pick 'em here at the South Point.
Grimace has won 6 in a row. That's all I'll throw out there. Number 3, the College World Series keeps going today. Elimination games on the ACC side. Florida State, UNC. That's the early game. Kentucky, Florida, the SEC matchup. A&M and Tennessee have already made it through to their side of the brackets finals. They'll have 2 games to win 1. These teams have to keep winning in order to get to the College World Series final in Omaha, or World Series final series, I should say, in Omaha, starting later in the week. What a College World Series it has been so far. Dramatics, cycles,
yes,
major comebacks. What a great College World Series has been through the first few days.
I will have one play on one of these games and
Very nice.
A few thoughts on the total, because as we're getting farther through the College World Series, some of these teams might be going to the back of their pitching lineup here. So that's a little tease for later in the show. Number 4, 2 WNBA games on the board. We'll have thoughts on both of them. But the New York Liberty, after a dominating win over the reigning champs, the Las Vegas Aces, go to Phoenix to take on the Mercury. Mercury have been playing very well as well. They are coming off an impressive win over the Storm. Liberty minus 5 total in this one, 170.
Liberty handled the Aces
Yes,
over the
they
weekend as well. Aces still no Chelsea Gray. A lot of problems defensively and offensively right now for the 2-time defending champions. And then number 5, speaking of champions, banner number 18, going to go up in the rafters. There in Boston, the Celtics beat the Mavericks up in Game 5. Jaylen Brown wins the MVP of the NBA Finals. Survival with the way Tatum played last night. If you had a Jaylen Brown bet, there was a legitimate debate. Even live markets had Tatum as a minus 300 favorite midway through the third quarter last night. Jaylen Brown got 7 votes. Tatum got 4. Good enough for Brown to win the Finals MVP. 106-88 your final, and it's never too early to look to next season. The Celtics favored over at DK, plus 290 to win the 2025 NBA Finals. Alex, I'm going to say this real quick. It is very early, but the Denver Nuggets are sitting there at 7 or 8 to 1, depending on the book that has these numbers up for next year. They improved the team in the offseason. That will probably be a play as we get closer to the regular season next year for me.
Not a bad play at all. Of course, they have Jokic, the best player in the league right now, but the West is pretty stacked, and that might set up nicely for the Celtics once again to go back-to-back. Still a lot of unknowns, though, right? We don't know where Donovan Mitchell's going. Dame and Giannis, see how things play out there in Milwaukee, but as we get closer, we will have plays on this. Jaylen Brown, very great speech at the end of the game, did give credit to his partner, Jason Tatum, and yeah, really good team win by them. Very impressive. As we talked about, dominating through the regular season and in the postseason. Not sure if it was who they played or them. I think they proved that in this final series.
In the end, we talked about it, 80 wins when it's all said and done for the Celtics. However, they got there. 80 wins with the regular season added. They ended up 80-21. Pretty good. Pretty good. By the way, Ryan, on on Punchlines today, we'll have your preview at the end of the show. Just give me a thumbs up. Will the Jason Tatum sound bit make it to the show today or no? No? It will not? It will not. Okay. All I will say on that is, yeah, the C- version of Kevin Garnett's from almost 15 years ago now. Yeah, whatever. It's good. It's good for this group. They finally
At least a B.
through.
At least a B.
And I will say that I will softer greater than I am. But I will say this, Joe Mazzulla, real quick. I just want to bring this up because this has kind of been a missed fact. Joe Mazzulla is 35 years old. He is super young, and the fact that locker room was willing to. Last year, he was the interim because of that situation with Ime Udoka. Gets the permanent job, and the team just got even better this year. And that's credit to Mazzulla, a very young coach who's going to be around in this league for a very long time. And also, shout out Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
Goes from the sideline to the front office and builds a champion within 5 years. Pretty darn good himself.
Very well said. And it is important to bring up both of those points because very impressive.
Very impressive, for sure. All right. Let's go into things real quick. Just to put the bow on this, well, actually, no, we'll hold the bow for a little bit. I want to go to the hockey game tonight first. Let's go there because there's actual action for tonight. Game 5. Alex, I'll just ask you real quick for Game 4. Is that just one of those for Florida? You just burn the tape and say, you know what? Bob didn't have his stuff. Edmonton played with their hair on fire. It was just one game. And we're not going to know it. There's no reason to change what we've been doing. We just had an off night in Game 4.
I think so. I really do. I think going back home, they'll be okay. And maybe Bobrovsky needed a little bit of rest, and that's why they pulled him after 5 goals and did kind of give him that rest. I do think this is Florida's game. They've been phenomenal at home. So, yeah, I would not overreact.
You know, with this Florida team, and again, they've been the most consistent team this postseason by a pretty significant margin. We've seen bad Bobrovsky realistically only twice now in this postseason. We saw it in Game 1 against Boston, where Boston just ripped them. It was 6-1. It wasn't even competitive. And then we saw it in Game 4. Bobrovsky bounced back in Game 2 against Boston and only gave up a goal. It's the reverse of Game 1. Florida just smacked around Boston in that game. I would be very surprised if we don't see something similar to that here tonight. And the way that I look at this here for Florida, where I'll give Edmonton credit. They've showed up in a big way in Game 4. Skinner even played well in that game because that was competitive early. Skinner made a few big saves, and then the game got out of control. But you're back home. You really don't want to get Edmonton has to get back on that plane. You're Florida. You really don't want to get back on that plane for that long flight back. The furthest travel series, as we've talked about throughout this week plus in Stanley Cup final history. I also kind of lean to the over as well, because this, I think, will play more as a straight elimination game, where if this gets to like 3-1 early enough in the third period, goalie's going to get pulled. 4, 5, like you're going to have empty. If Edmonton gets in a hole, you're going to have an empty net for an extended period of time in this third period here, Alex. And we know that's a good sign to get as many goals as humanly possible.
Total-wise, I'm with you. I did make this a little bit higher than 5.5, so lean to the over, but I don't want to be greedy. We did cash both the overs when they were in Edmonton. Yep. Now coming back to Florida, we saw 2 low-scoring games in those first 2. I also, as you mentioned, we could see empty net goals, but I do kind of worry that this plays out more like a 2-2 game, both really tight. Florida trying to get it done here, so I'm not going to touch the total. Haven't done anything with the side yet. I think that is a pretty good price you're getting on Florida at home here, but I'm just going to wait and see. If Oilers score first, then I'm going to jump in on the Panthers, and they have in 2 of the 4 games. So, and they're playing with their backs against the wall once again. So they are going to come out shooting as often as possible. And then we'll get a much better number on the Panthers to finish it off. We know that the third period has been a little bit tough for the Oilers to finish out games throughout this postseason. So I think that's the best way to play it. It's kind of what I did yesterday with the Celtics, except for we don't have a point spread here in hockey because I just played the money line with Boston yesterday. So this one I'm going to wait and see. And if Panthers score first, then maybe I just don't have a bet in this game.
It's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. Again, you can play a lot of these things in game as well. See if there's a scenario. Chris and company did put up props. Alex, you have one that caught your attention here because we always talk about in the Super Bowl, and honestly, most NFL games that are offered with props at some books now, the team that score 3 straight. We know in football, usually the yes is the one that cashes. It's a beloved bet for the public to go on the plus side, no, but it usually loses. This is a little bit different here because in every game in this series, a team has scored 3 straight goals.
Yes.
Which is, I have to imagine, very rare for a Stanley Cup final. That's offered here tonight at the South Point.
Yeah, and it is favored, the yes, minus 140. So if you like the no at plus 120, which, I mean, an elimination game, it's hard to see one team scoring 3 in a row, unless you said Florida gets out to a big lead, 1-1, and then they just score 2 more, kind of like game 2. But yeah, it's tempting. And we talked about it off the air. What if there's not 3 goals?
Well, then, yeah.
Scored by one team in general.
So I will say this just real quick, because I kind of, when we were doing this before the show, I was like, oh, probably would have looked at a no just because of the law of averages and such. But the scenario I brought up is squarely in play here.
It is.
Where Florida could get one to push it to 3-1, and then Edmonton starts pulling the goalie, and your season's on the line. Who cares how many goals you lose by here in Game 5? It doesn't matter. So you could get Florida get 2 junk empty net goals, and that's 1, 2, 3 right there. So it's a little more complex because of the elimination game factor than it would normally be in a hockey game, for sure. It's an interesting prop. It's a good prop that Chris and company threw up there for this game.
And I'm sure that is priced in there at the minus 140.
Absolutely. I would absolutely imagine that to be the case for sure. All right, I want to add one last thing real quick, because we talked about on Saturday that, hey, the Conn Smythe, the betting market's telling us that Bobrovsky's won this thing. And the path for a non-Bobrovsky winner would take a bad performance, maybe 2, from Bobrovsky. Now, that was the worst performance of the postseason for Bobrovsky. The difference in the odds is stark. Now, Bobrovsky and Barkov are both even money. McDavid 7-1. No one else is winning this thing, according to the betting markets. Gustav Forsling was the one we mentioned on Saturday. Hey, there's some writers in South Florida that think, oh, Forsling could be in the mix here. He's 500-1. The betting market is telling us that he's not going to win. So, Bobrovsky's back to even. Barkov's even. I will say this. I still think Bobrovsky wins it, but the fact that we have now seen Barkov, again, get hurt game 2, make a huge impact in game 3, he is a huge game 5, and I know this is a full playoff award, Alex. But not be shocked if Barkov ends up winning this. And if you had that 5-1
right
plus 450s that were readily available throughout this series, you did very well in getting those numbers. If you want Bobrovsky, this is far and away the best time in this series to go bet it, even money.
I like it. That's definitely the way I would play this, because I do think it is still his award, especially if they do win tonight and he has an outstanding performance, holds the Oilers under a goal or 2. Then I think that award is definitely given to him. So even money sounds like a great price. And if you like the Panthers just to win, like you're saying, take either one of those to win the award.
Yeah, now this would have been better. Even at the minus 260 plus 450 range, probably would have been better to take both.
Right.
Now you're probably just in a scenario. It's like, well, I have Bobrovsky. If I like Bobrovsky, now's the time, since the price is the best it's been the whole series. Let's go to the hardwood here. Obviously, Celtics win the title. Alex, I'll just ask you this now in an off season, and this goes for any sport whatsoever. Just how do you go about moves in the off season that come about, changing your power ratings? Is it not as complex as it may feel to some on the outside, or is it a complex situation, especially in the NBA when individual guys, we talk about in the NFL, obviously the quarterback makes a huge role, but it's still a 53-man roster. when you only have 5 on the floor, 1, 2 guys can just make a world of difference, obviously, in the NBA and obviously the W as well.
Well, for me and what I have learned is just each player having a power rating.
Yep.
So it is pretty not simple, but you do just move them as the off-season moves happen, right? And adjust your team power rating based off of who moves where. So it'll take some time, and there's a lot of off-season moves to still happen to pay attention to.
Well, players are allowed to start signing today if they're staying with their own team. So you could see a Tyrese Maxey deal in Philadelphia. You're not going to see one with Paul George and the Clippers because he's going to be the guy who's most likely to probably go somewhere else this offseason. Apparently, that's a 3-horse race between the Clippers, the Sixers, and the Orlando Magic for Paul George. That's apparently what it is right now, which means they'll probably sign with someone else other than those 3 teams. But a lot of NBA offseason. Some people like the NBA offseason more than they like their season. Not as crazy as it used to be, but hey, we'll see how it all plays out. To the W real quick, Alex. 2 games today. We are completely out of Commissioner Cup play, which, by the way, one quick note on the Commissioner Cup final. For lack of a better way to say it, there's pure stupidity on the league's part. That game's not being played at the Liberty's home arena in Barclays. Barclays is being used for the NBA draft that night. So that final is going to be played where the Islanders play, right by Belmont Park at UBS Arena. So, yeah, it's a little more difficult to get to, especially for people that live in the city. You have to get on the Long Island Railroad, get out there, maybe not as good of a crowd, not familiar surroundings. Really just silly from the league to not cater to the team who ended up getting home court, just push it back a week and play it at Barclays that week and play it on the first like the Liberty wanted to. But alas, the league office still does some things that they should not be doing. Let's just go with that. Still need to get a little bit better in that league office. The 2 games tonight, L.A. at Connecticut's first. Looks like someone just took a nice slice of L.A. here. Went from 14 to 13. So this opened 12.5, got popped to 14. Now it's 13. Totals moved down 2.5 points, 155.5 to 153.
I thought that number was a little bit too high on the Sun, and I know they are back home, but you brought up a great point about who they have played, and since their loss to the Liberty, I mean, they've taken care of business, won 3 straight and covered in those 3, but they beat the Fever by 17, the Sky by 8, and the Wings by 18. Not great teams right there, especially the Wings were really beat up, missing 3 of their starters in that one. So I don't think the Sparks are getting enough respect here, but it could get out of hand, and Connecticut is very good. They have the best defensive rating right now coming into this one. I went ahead and played the Sparks first half, though, because I do think they will hang in for at least that long, and they have a good trend going, 9-4-1 ATS in the first quarter, 7-7 in the first half, but the Suns really start slow, 3-9-1 in the first quarter and 6-6-1 in the first half. So I'm taking a shot. We'll have see if the Sparks can at least hang in for that first half. Total is very interesting as well. It is super low, but I think that number is just right. So I'm not going to do anything there.
The other game tonight, Phoenix hosting New York. Liberty have obviously played tremendous basketball this year, second best record in the league, only because they played 1 extra game again. And then Connecticut 12-2. The Mercury, who you and I both thought would be a little bit of a disappointment for the second consecutive year, they're, I think, pretty solidly at this point, and we've talked about this. The top 7, I think, is pretty much set of who's going to go to the WNBA playoffs. It's just a matter of how we're going to get it all seeded out, more so than anything, and the Mercury are included in that group. They got a really nice win against Seattle over the weekend on Sunday. Now they face an even bigger test. Market is betting Phoenix, though, from 6-5. Total all over the map. 166.5 at open. Did not stay there very long. Got all the way up to 171.5. Now coming back down the ladder at 170 right now.
It's unfortunate because, yes, on this show, I did say that Phoenix was going to struggle, especially without Brittany Griner. So I thought taking their win total under would be okay until she came back, and then they would catch up. But talking with my dad before the season even started, I mean, they were definitely on my radar, the Mercury, to be better. And he's made the point to me of how important Brittany Griner is to that team. So that's kind of where I got that win total and going under there. But you're right about New York. They are fantastic. And it took them a little bit of time to mesh with their starting five. And last year we saw that transition period and them going through that. And now, I mean, they are clicking on all cylinders. They're very good offensively and defensively. They've been very good holding teams to under their team total. I like the Phoenix Mercury in this one just because the Liberty are coming off of such a big game against the Aces, and we know how important that is to them. So I did grab the 5.5 here with Phoenix to hang in this one because they have been very competitive. As I mentioned, they just beat the Storm straight up. I thought that was a good play to take the points with them. So they're back at home. I think they'll be okay covering in this one and hanging in there. Total's interesting. I'm not going to touch that total. I was okay with that 166, but can't go against the bettors here because both of these teams do love to run. So it could definitely go over very easily.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if excuse me, if this game's played in the 90s. That first number was really good over. Now, I don't know. And now you're feeling, even though it's coming back down the ladder, it kind of feels like you're chasing still.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
It would be a stay off more so than anything for me. Just throwing this out there real quick. We'll get to some baseball a little bit later in the show. Euros the next 2 days, the next 3 matches that are up. Czech Republic, Portugal coming up at noon today. Currently, right now, Georgia and Turkey tied 0-0. Turkey closed about a minus 160 favorite across the board. Took a lot of money over the last day plus. Portugal behind us, goal favored on the goal line, minus 115. Minus 200 on those 3-lay lines that are available out there. Czech Republic about plus 550, total 2.5 there. Nothing in that one. Albania and Croatia look to play Albania on a goal line if you can get a goal and a half. Croatia looked very old against Spain. Now, they solid it out. We're a little more solid in the second half, but the game was already 3-0. Albania hung in there against Italy. Got that goal really early, but then gave up 2 quick ones. But the rest of that game, I thought, was relatively even, all things considered, against a clearly better side in the Italians. I think if you can get a goal and a half with Albania, you can go ahead and take that tomorrow. That's the early one, 6 a.m. out here on the West Coast. And then Germany and Hungary, it would only be a look to the over. These Germany matches are going to be very high scoring. Don't love that it's 3. Would have liked to juice 2.5 over as opposed to a 3 even. But I still think 3 even, you can take a shot. Germany matches, especially in this group stage, at least for this one, like the game against Scotland, you can lean to an over at 3 on that one with Germany.
And you had a good weekend while we were gone in these
selectively
games.
Good. That over in the France game that we talked about on Saturday didn't get there, even though I was able to buy out of it. And worked okay. We talked about not Slovakia. Slovakia had the big upset yesterday. Didn't have that one at all. We liked the England not to cover a goal and a half if you could get it against Serbia. England won 1-0. So, and then Romania, totally forgot to mention them on Saturday. They were an excellent bet yesterday as they won easily as an underdog against the Ukrainians yesterday in Germany. Going to baseball real quick. By the way, also, Sam Panayotovich is going to join us in less than 5 minutes. We'll also have, starting between 9:40 and 9:45, our preview of the Dallas Cowboys, our early preview of the Dallas Cowboys. Don't worry, we'll do a lot more when we get to August as well, but we have the beginnings of our team previews this week here in the NFC East. Baseball-wise, Alex, you mentioned San Francisco and Chicago. The Cubs are really struggling right now to score, even though they broke that under streak yesterday, mostly because the Giants had that epic comeback. Today, you have a pick between the Cubs and the Giants. Steele against Webb. Total's been bet up to 10. Now bet back down the ladder to 9.5, minus 120.
Yeah, and a lean to the under there at that, even at minus 9.5. I think that is really high for these two, especially as I mentioned, Cubs were on a nice little under streak going into this one. Pretty even matchup between these two pitchers. Logan Webb has pitched a lot more than Justin Steele. He's 0-3, just 50 innings pitched for him, but really good ratio, 48 to 13 strikeout to walks. And then Logan Webb, 6-5 on the year, 78 strikeouts, 3.02 ERA. And in his last 3 starts, he's really kept the opponent's batting average down, and especially their xFIP. So I like Logan Webb today. I think that is a very cheap price for San Francisco, even though they're on the road, minus 105.
Cubs really, again, just to look at the Cubs side of things, you look at the way that the Cubs have played offense just the last few games, and their bullpen has been a problem all year. It was a problem last night. I mean, that Cardinals series, other than the 5 spot, scored 1 run in the other 2 games. Tampa, they had problem scoring. It just been a very frustrating year for the Cubs, who I thought were going to be the best team in that division. They are in the last place right now in the National League Central. Now, granted,
very tight race.
That NL wildcard race is a disaster zone right now. Other than Atlanta, who's 8 games over 500 at the moment. Totally fine, even with all the injuries.
Yeah.
Acuna's out. Michael Harris is going to be out for a while with a hamstring injury he suffered over the weekend. We know Strider's there. They may have, if it wasn't for such a weak league behind them, I would say, hey, maybe you look at Atlanta to miss the playoffs bets. You just can't do it with how everyone else behind them is so mediocre to blah at this point. The Cardinals are currently the 5th seed, Alex, at 36-35.
They were the favorite going in.
To win the Central, they were. Yes. Milwaukee has been a nice surprise if you bet them in firm control in that division right now. And then all of these teams that I'm about to mention are within 2 games of each other, and none of them are over 500. The Giants, the Nationals, the Padres, the Diamondbacks, the Pirates, the Mets, the Reds, and the Cubs are all within 2 games of each other. Everyone. The best record of the bunch right now, the Giants and the Nationals, who were projected to be one. Look at this, and you can find some numbers that you might like. Now, granted, some of these numbers, just eyeballing it real quick, not a huge fan of it, but the Padres plus 190 would be something I would look at. I know they're playing some pretty bad baseball at the moment. Still think they have enough talent to get there. Plus 190 is not bad. Everyone involved right now, and this is the fun of this, everyone involved in that wild card race that isn't the Atlanta Braves, all with a plus number.
Nice.
So you got plenty of options to find some plus money right now. The only thing I will say, the Braves are 8-1 to miss. So maybe I wish I was getting double digits. If you got double digits, I'd consider it, but not at 8-1.
No, and as you mentioned, I mean, if everybody wasn't so far behind them, they already do have a nice little 7-game lead there. But it is interesting, and it's a great market to dive into, especially if you can if you see some teams. You're right about the Nationals. I mean, I think they are the biggest surprise.
They are
in the National League.
Right now, Washington is 18-1 to make the playoffs. So, the bookmakers clearly not buying it at the moment with Washington. That is, by the way, the biggest number by a significant margin of all those teams in the mix right there on the NL side. The Pirates have the next longest at 5-1. For reference, by the way, the Rockies, who are completely done, by the way, at 10.5 for 25-1.
Wow.
So that Washington number actually might be, that Washington number is clearly not right based off of that. But hey, no trust in the Nats, who
worth a little pizza money.
Maybe. I don't think they'll get there, but at 18-1, tied 71 games in, they're worse bets to be made. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we get back, Sam Panayotovich, Sammy P, up in Boston, after the Celtics won their title, get his thoughts on Celtics winning it and wherever else we may go with Sammy P. Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.
South Point offers all the types of entertainment you'd expect at a first-class Las Vegas resort. Did you know our 400-seat showroom is one of Las Vegas's top destinations for live entertainment? Enjoy live performances by classic Vegas entertainers, bands, and today's hottest comedians, plus a rockin' dance floor. You can also enjoy live entertainment at the Grand View Lounge, where you'll feel all the vibes of old Las Vegas. Enjoy the music, and if you love to laugh, don't miss The Dirty at 12:30, our very own free comedy show. Every Friday night at 12:30 a.m. in the Grand View Lounge. The Dirty is 100% free, so arrive early. Go to southpointcasino.com or call the box office at 77136 for today's performances at the showroom and the Grandview Lounge. When you're ready for your favorite cocktail, stop in and unwind at one of our 7 specialty lounges. There's a bar around every corner, because you're in Vegas, baby. South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you've still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
Welcome back in Sports by the Book, South Point Studio. Jeff Parles, Alex White, alongside, as always. Now joining us is our good friend Sammy P. SP Shoot on Twitter, of course. Fox Sports, Chicken Dinner, as always. There's the beautiful OTP for our guy Sammy P. Good morning, Sam.
You could call it that, Jeff and Alex, I guess. It's been an interesting morning. I just spent 30 minutes trying to find Georgia and Turkey on the TV. Literally, I gave up 3 seconds ago because I can't find it. I got under 2.5 and I can't find it. I went to bed very, very late because the Celtics won a championship. It's been an interesting morning, to say the least.
By the way, real quick on that, Turkey 1, Georgia 0. Turkey just had a goal disallowed, so that's a good thing for your under that we are not sitting at 2-0 30 minutes in.
I'm glad you brought up that word disallowed because I have Romelu Lukaku to win the Golden Boot.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the game yesterday. You know, I'm a casual soccer observer and a casual soccer bettor. But I grabbed him about 14-1 to win the Golden Boot. And he scored twice yesterday. Twice. And they disallowed both of them. I'm about to rip the TV off the wall because he scores the first one. And that one he was offside. And then the second one he scores, the guy had a handball allegedly. So he scored 2 goals and neither of them counted. Clearly, I'm over it.
You know, it has not been a fun go in these major tournaments for Lukaku the last 2 games. Sam, I know you weren't alone on that one because social media was ablaze of that with both of those Lukaku goals getting disallowed yesterday. And a shocker yesterday, Slovakia upsetting Belgium 1-0. All right, going real quick, Sam, just to your neck of the woods. Celtics win the title. We'll bring this up real quick because Jaylen Brown ended up winning the MVP. I know there were some that did not love that. Were you in agreement that Brown should have won that, or do you think, based off of what we saw for the whole series and especially last night, that Tatum should have swooped in and gotten that award when it was all said and done?
I'm glad the voters gave it to Brown. You know, I think oftentimes we look at, stat lines and we look at how many points guys average and rebounds and all that jazz. But Jaylen Brown was guarding Luka Doncic for the majority of the series. And that doesn't really show up on the stat sheet. I mean, you can look at Luka's points, and he really struggled in that fourth quarter, which brings up the point, like, who's in better shape, Lukaku or Doncic? I have no idea. I think it's a pick'em. Luka looks like me after a night out. But no, Jaylen Brown was their best player. He was their most important player in the series. I don't know, it's a hot take segment. Who's better, Tatum or Brown? I think big picture, Jason Tatum has a higher ceiling. But in that series, Jaylen Brown was better. And I was glad that he got the award because oftentimes these writers and voters, they do the Lifetime Achievement Award and they give guys awards that maybe they shouldn't win. Brown was the better player in this series. I don't know that he's a better player overall, but he was definitely better against Dallas.
Sam, let's move to the ice. Edmonton snuck in here and kind of deprived us of a great series we could have had between Florida and Dallas. And now this series has looked very lopsided with the Panthers clearly being the better team. trying to close it out today at home, -140. Do you like anything in this game?
Lean to the Panthers, just a better team, more complete team. I mean, their forecheck has really given Edmonton problems. And I think the hardest thing to do, and, the three of us all deal with this all the time, you try not to overreact to the last thing you saw, and you try and understand, everything that's happened in this series. And really, Edmonton has gotten lots of shots, but not really strong chances because they've kept them out to the perimeter, and Bob has been awesome for Florida. So if you can wipe your brain from the last game when Edmonton scored, 7, 8 goals, and just focus on how much better Florida has been in the series, they roll, 3, 4 lines deep. Their D are very good. The goalie, I just mentioned, Bob, is probably the Conn Smythe winner if all goes to plan. I lean to Florida. I don't know that I want to lay 140. I'm looking, South Point's got 140 right now. Some books are even more expensive, 145. It's Florida or pass. I'm not sure what you two are going to do with the game. I lean to Florida, but I don't really want to do Florida -140. Some books let you do Florida in regulation, which cheapens the favorite, so you can get like +110. Panthers have to win the game in regulation. Maybe that's the look, but I'm trying my best to not buy into the Edmonton 8-goal outburst in the last game.
Well, I'm happy you brought up the point that you did in the way you did, because the Conn Smythe market, because of that game, has completely changed. Bobrovsky, who was going off at about -320, -360 going into game 4, is now back to even money. Sasha Barkov, who was +450 most of the series, is now down to even money as well. We still feel like this is Bobrovsky's award to lose here, Sam, but the market is telling us that this is a virtual coin flip between these two guys now.
Which doesn't make sense. And I think, two things on that point. You look at the total in this game, and South Point's dealing 5.5 under 15. It's so funny how that works because the recency bias does play into a lot of this stuff. And, the last game was well over the total, and yet this game is still 5.5 juiced under. So that basically says, the books are telling you without telling you, yeah, that was sort of an aberration. Like, there are not going to be 8 Edmonton goals in this game. So the fact that they're already moving it down, 5.5 under 15 tells me this is going to be a lower, slower game, physicality, goaltending, which plays into Bob. And I understand that Barkov has taken some money, but if Florida wins this game 3-1 or 2-0, he's going to win. Bob's going to win the Conn Smythe. So this is sort of a good buy point on the goalie. And you mentioned he was -300 or so to win it earlier in the series. So it doesn't really make sense. I wouldn't be betting. I certainly wouldn't bet Barkov right now. I mean, the time that bet Barkov was 4, 5, 6 to 1. I would be surprised if this was a higher scoring game. And like I said, I think Florida's going to win it. If it's a lower game, 2-0, 3-1, it should be Bobrovsky, Conn Smythe.
Sammy, we had to jump to the betting angles first, of course, but I do want to get your take on what the vibe is in Boston now winning their 18th title in franchise history.
Well, I haven't been outside yet today, so I can't tell you exactly how the vibe is, but I can tell you how the vibe was last night.
That's great.
There were probably, I want to say there were 50,000 people outside the arena, and Boston Garden holds about 19,000. So you do the math. I mean, 50,000 people just pouring into the streets. The bars were jammed. The city didn't sleep, I don't think, and I didn't sleep. So it was great. These people out here are spoiled. That's their 19th or 20th championship, I believe, since the century turned. With the Patriots and the Red Sox, the Bruins got a Stanley Cup. The Celtics have won 2 titles now. 08 and 24. They just know how to party when they win, and they win a lot. So it was a good time. And then, of course, you look at the odds for next year. I mean, I pulled this up. Boston Celtics shy of 3-1 to win next year's championship, and all those guys are coming back. So give them credit. Brad Stevens made a very good trade to bring in Porzingis, bring in Drew Holiday, and they are certainly the odds-on favorite to run it back next year.
Sam, I want to go to baseball real quick. The NL wild card race is a mess, to put it politely. You basically have the whole league, other than the teams that are winning their divisions, the Braves, and the two horrible teams in Miami and Colorado, everyone else is within 2 games of each other right now. It's a complete jumbled mess. What do you make of it? Is there anything out there in a futures market of, hey, to make the playoffs that you would look at for a certain team in that mess of teams that's there?
I think the Cincinnati Reds are worth a look. They kind of came out of the gate a little bit sluggish, but in terms of talent, I think that's the best roster in a very weak National League Central. And they're only 4 games out right now. Now, they've lost 3 in a row, which isn't ideal, but, 1.5 out of the wild card. And you can, look at their price right now to make the playoffs. You can find plus 310, plus 320 to make the playoffs. If you want to jack that up, they're as high as 11-1 to win the NL Central. It's a very weak division. I think their pitching is a little questionable. Like, I'm not going to get crazy and say they're going to win the pennant or win the World Series. But in terms of a 9-man lineup, very, very good. Dela Cruz, one of the most talented players in the game, and it's a damn logjam. You're right. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams within like 2 games of the final wild card spot. So you could take a poke on one of those teams on the board. I'm not doing the Mets. I'm not doing the Padres. Nationals are getting really trendy, but I think Cincinnati, given their talent and given their lineup and the price, like 3-1, 320 to make the playoffs, I don't think that's the worst idea at this point in time.
I'll just bring up because you brought it up, the Nats. I just think they're priced wrong right now, Sam, where they're currently tied for the last wild card. And DK right now to make the playoffs on the Nats has 18-1. The rest of these teams, the next highest team is Pittsburgh at 5-1. I don't think the Nats are going to get there. I just think that's a wrong price from DK at 18-1 on the Nats for what the rest of the market is.
I hear you. Maybe you'll take a little ride to Arizona after the show and go pop them at 18-1. I mean, that's the best part about this racket, right? Like, if you think the price is wrong, you can go and bet it. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I wouldn't fight you on the price. I mean, to have them at 18-1 when they're right there doesn't feel right. But that's just the books basically saying they're not going to make it. I mean, these bookmakers take stances all the time. So that's what it is. But if you're right and they're wrong, hell, man, 18-1 is not a bad price at all.
No, again, I'm with you. I don't think they have enough juice to get there. But hey, I mean, James Wood is sitting there in AAA. Maybe we see him at some point this year. Maybe they go for it. But again, 18-1 when the rest of the teams are that short. That's the only reason I even would consider it at this point. All right, he's Sammy P. Again, Chicken Dinner, where you can find him, Fox Sports as well, SP Shoot on Twitter as well. Sammy will let you go get some rest. We'll let you go find a way to go find that soccer game as well this morning. Appreciate you hanging out with us.
Can't find it. No idea where it's at.
Sammy P., everyone. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we begin our NFL previews with America's team, supposedly. The Dallas Cowboys, first up in our NFL season preview when we get back. Sports by the Book.
Once you've satisfied your hunger, get ready for more of the hottest casino games in Vegas. Our 24-hour, 30-table non-smoking poker room proudly hosts all the most popular poker games with a variety of betting limits. Visit the poker room for a schedule of daily tournaments. Whether you're going to hold 'em or fold 'em, the best place for poker is at South Point Casino. You'll notice that our craps tables are usually the loudest in the casino. If you've never played, join one of our free craps lessons to find out what makes this game so exciting. Check with the craps dealer for schedules and give it a roll. Bingo is also an exciting way to spend your time. We offer 7 sessions of bingo every day. And each session includes a cash ball jackpot, 12 bingo games, a progressive double action game, and a $10,000 bonus coverall. Electronic units are available. If you haven't played bingo with us, give it a try today. Guests can also get in on the action at our one-of-a-kind race and sports books. 2 separate rooms designed to maximize your experience and comfort. Our sports book, with over 400 seats, puts you right in the middle of the action, 24 hours a day. The friendly ticket writers are happy to help, and it's conveniently located next to the famous Del Mar Deli, where you'll find supersized portions of delicious deli items like roast beef, pastrami, and Reuben sandwiches, or soups, salads, and pizza, plus spectacular desserts fit for a king. And right next door is the race book, over 150 seats, each with its own TV screen. There are 16 interactive player terminals, so you can bet right from your seat.
Welcome back in. I'm Jeff Parles. Alex White is here as well. I'm going to have to get grits after the show now.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to get... Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, definitely. That was a key part
To the trial.
to the trial. Yeah, it was. It was. Can't cook grits that quick.
My cousin Vinny, for anybody who
Yeah,
is watching and curious.
You know what? I think our Alex, our demographic is not the age of Caden, who I think knows My Cousin Vinny anyway, right? I mean, it's a classic. But our demo, right in the sweet spot, more so than anything.
We have some fun on this show, too.
We sure do.
Not just
we sure do.
punchlines.
And not just punchlines, where Frank Nicotero causes chaos any which way he does on a normal basis. But it'll be a lot of fun on that show at noon today. We'll get to check in with Ryan McCormick in about 15 minutes from now. All right. It's June 18th. The NBA season is over. Both of us expect the NHL season to be over. So it's a perfect time to bring in our NFL season previews to begin here right away. There we go. Great job by Caden. So now football's on fire. It's on fire right now. Sports by the Book NFL season, NFL team previews, starting with the star, the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys, where we get the start. The defending NFC East champions. Alex, a team has not repeated in the NFC East in 20 years now. Philadelphia Eagles are the last team to do it 20 years ago. Been a long time since we've had a repeat champion in the NFC East. And this Dallas team, more so than anything, this offseason, because they were really handcuffed by the situation with Dak Prescott's contract. Dak will play the final year of his contract here. He's not under contract past this year. But the way this quarterback market is, there's a big question mark of if Dak will be there past this season. The Cowboys didn't do much this offseason. Their big offensive acquisition is they brought Ezekiel Elliott back and drafted Tyler Guyton on the offensive line. That's not just all their departures on the bottom. They lost 2 key offensive linemen in Biedza and of course, Tyron Smith, who hasn't played a lot the last few years due to injury. Tony Pollard leaves to go to Tennessee, but I don't really think that's a huge thing. I thought Pollard was a shell of himself after the broken leg he suffered, Alex. But Dallas, this is, as we know, it's at least make the NFC Championship game or bust, probably win the Super Bowl or bust. And his roster is not good enough, at least from my perspective, to be considered one of the true contenders to win the Lombardi this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far either, but I do still think it is a 2-horse race between them and the Eagles to win this division. Of course, the other teams are making moves. Commanders should be much improved, but I do think it is a pretty big drop-off from Tony Pollard going back to Zeke here, and Pollard did have over 1,000 rushing yards, and Dak Prescott, I mean, it was worth it, right? He did have the 3rd most passing yards last year, so keeping him happy is very good. We also saw them pass at a much higher rate than other teams, and I'll get that percentage up in a second. But you have to expect we're going to see even more of that, right? We don't know what's happening with CeeDee Lamb, but they are going to figure out that contract as well. And now going back to Zeke. So I do think that is a downgrade, and that will hurt their run game, which is still very important in this day and age, even though it isn't utilized as much as the past. But big move, too, with the new defensive coordinator. And I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if it is an upgrade or maybe just staying the same. But now they have Mike Zimmer here, who is very good But we know that they had Dan Quinn, who is also very good.
Of course, Dan Quinn goes to Washington. We probably should have put him on the departures in addition as well. Of course, there was always the thought that Jerry would fire McCarthy, bring in Quinn, just promote him. We thought that with Kellen Moore at one point as well. Kellen Moore, of course, is now the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia after 1 year with the Chargers. It's defensively, just looking there for a second. We'll go back to the offense. You get Trayvon Diggs back after missing most of the season with the knee injury, tearing his ACL. Deron Bland, of course, set the record for most pick sixes in the season. I thought that was kind of more window dressing, more so than anything. I think Bland will take a nice, significant step backwards this year. I don't see him being an elite corner potentially again. Micah Parsons, of course, we know, fully healthy, ready to go yet again. DeMarcus Lawrence still there on the other side. They added Eric Kendricks. That was one of the few additions that they actually did make to shore up their linebacking core. This is still a roster that is very talented. They're still very talented. This is still pretty clearly to me a playoff caliber team. Now, you look at the rest of the division around it. We'll, of course, preview the rest of the division around it. The Giants still aren't quite there yet. Washington improved, but you are dealing with a rookie quarterback and a guy who hasn't been a head coach in about 5 years. And then Philly, who knows? They were arguably the worst team in the NFL by the end of last year, except for Carolina. But they improved their coordinators in a huge way. Vic Fangio comes up from Miami. Kellen Moore comes up from the Chargers to improve their coordinators, who were really not good at all last year, both defensive and offensively speaking. So that's a big improvement. But you look at Dallas, you look at the way that the schedule breaks down, you look at the win totals, you look at the divisional odds. Dallas behind us here at the South Point is a 10.5 on the win total. Juice to the under. I feel like that win total is high, if anything, Alex, where you look at their schedule right out of the gate.
Yep.
Again, they play Cleveland. That's a primo afternoon game. We'll get to the AFC North in a few weeks. I'm not particularly high on the Browns going into the year. This is actually a week one bet that if you want to look at Dallas, Dallas is an underdog at some shops right now. Don't mind that at all for the Cowboys right away out of the gate on the road in Cleveland. Tough game week 3 against Baltimore at home. You get the Steelers on a Sunday night. They play a short week against the Giants, who aren't particularly good. You get the Lions and the Niners back-to-back with a bye smushed in the middle, which is honestly a pretty good break that the bye is smushed in. You get extra rest going to the Niners, who have really just owned the Cowboys in these last few years. But schedule, for the most part, even withdrawing the AFC North, I don't think it's awful, even though I don't love the cross game in the AFC when they have to play Houston later in the year, who I think the Texans are going to take a nice leap forward, even with a leap that they took unexpectedly a year ago.
Well, that's what I was just going to point out. Week 8 to week 14 right there is a very tough stretch for them at San Francisco, at Atlanta. I know you might not be that high on the Falcons, but
Falcons are the rightful favorite in that division right now.
Hosting the Eagles, the Texans, then at Washington, which we know for whatever reason, Washington plays the Cowboys very well. And then they've got the Giants and then the Bengals. So I think that stretch is the toughest part. Now, this team is 3-2 to the over in their win totals in the last 5 years, 3 straight years of 12 wins. Now, that's the toughest part when looking at Dallas is, can they repeat that? Can they go 8-0 at home like they did last year, 5-1 in division play, and 9-3 in conference? Like, that's going to be the toughest part. And as you mentioned, very talented roster. I don't think their defense is going to drop off too much, who held opponents to an average of 18.5 points per game last year. So if they can stay very strong defensively, they still have majority of their weapons offensively. Tough to do it again. Tough to get over 10.5 4 years in a row, though. And I can see why that is juiced to the under.
So Dallas, you see all the numbers on the left side of your screen. Dallas 15-1 to win it all. 8-1 to win the NFC. Plus 120. They are the slightest of the division favorites over the Eagles right now at plus 120 in the division. You look at the way that everything is played out here. And again, Some books have Philadelphia favored. Other books have Dallas favored. So again, shop, make sure you get the right pricing on the Cowboys right now. Behind us, it's plus 115 and plus 120. So it's legitimately tight. Other books at plus 115, plus 130. Be on the lookout for Dallas numbers that are higher than plus 130 if you want the Cowboys to win this division. I think them and the Eagles should be the same odds. Personally, I think they should be the exact same odds because of what we saw going out of last year with Philly. You need to show me going in before I actually look to play you in the NFC East. Now, we talked about it. It's been 22 decades since we had a repeat champion in this division. It has been topsy-turvy throughout. But when push comes to shove on this Cowboy team, the bet that I'm actually looking at, more so than anything, Dak Prescott, his passing yardage total at some books is 4,150. I want the over there. 4,500 a year ago.
Yep.
And I think their run game is going to be weak. I would look to bet Dak over his passing yardage total this year. That would be the way that I would look to do. That's at DK, by the way, the number that's out there. There's other numbers out there as well. But that's, of all the bets that are out there related to the Cowboys, that's the one I would look at. He's also playing for a mega contract, whether it's with Dallas or with someone else next year. There are going to be a lot of potential places that will probably want Dak and be willing to give him the biggest NFL quarterback contract ever that will exceed both Lawrence and Burrow, who are currently the highest paid guys out there. I would look to that. I think this is a big I'm not saying this is going to be a big win-loss season for Dallas, but I think it's going to be a big statistical season for Dak going into this offseason, especially with a limited run game that Dallas, I expect them to have.
Limited run game and then very good receivers, right? CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks was very good last year, had 8 touchdowns. And then Jake Ferguson, their tight end, who really had a great year last year in his third year or in his second year in the league. So I'm with you there. I would definitely say that we are going to see more passing from them.
Yeah, that's of all the bets. The win total, yes, it feels high, but wouldn't shock me even with a little more of a difficult schedule if they go 11-6. Wouldn't shock me. It would definitely be a lean to the under at the 10.5. I don't want anything to do with them on the conference or the division or that. I still think I would lean to Philly slightly in the division, but again, have a hard time betting that market with how the Eagles look and the season. But that's my favorite play by a pretty significant margin on this team would be Dak over 41.50.5 passing yards. That would be the only thing I'd even look at with this team, except for that week 1 bet that we talked about.
I think that is a really good bet. And I didn't really look at which of these future bets on the Cowboys that I liked the most, but I think you just threw out a great one.
It is, again, throughout the next few weeks, we'll go through all these teams. Tomorrow's the Giants, which will be a lot of fun. A lot of new changes there in New York. Had a very fun offseason. Still probably not good enough. By the way, we're just going to at least throw this out there for everyone to at least look at this. Right now, there's no sack numbers on Parson that I'm seeing, which is a little bit interesting. And it's really only rookie numbers that are out there right now. So as these populate, we'll bring it up. Parsons, of course, I would anticipate that Micah Parsons, when those markets come out as a whole, because only the offensive stat markets are out there right now, Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett will probably be your, and TJ Watt will be your 3 leaders for sack leader props. I would look to bet Parsons this year. That would be another. Now, there is some concern with the change of defensive coordinator. Mike Zimmer, the head coach, Mike Zimmer, the D coordinator, even though he hasn't done it in a few years, still at his peak was one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. I don't think there'll be that huge of a drop-off, at least from Parsons' productivity levels with the change of DC. Maybe the rest of it, again, the law of averages would bland. I think he'll come back to earth because you just are not going to have a season like that again. And Trayvon Diggs coming off injury, that's why I'm not saying, that defense is clearly going to be as good as it was a year ago, just because I think the secondary, more so than pass rush, will be impacted this year.
I actually saw a quote from Mike Zimmer that said he really liked what Dan Quinn did with Parsons, and expects to do the same thing, best player on the ball at all times. So that just goes along with your bet right there. He is 5-1 for defensive player of the year.
Yeah, that's the interesting one there, where defensive player of the year right now, it's Watt and Parsons, basically similar odds depending on the shop. Then with Bosa, Crosby, and Garrett right behind them. So it's a mix between those 5, 8, and Hutchinson's the only other one in most shops that's 10-1 or less. There are no bad choices I just mentioned.
There's not.
I don't think there's any bad argument, even though when we get to the Raiders, Max Crosby is going to be mentioned a lot by me because that defense starts and goes with him.
Yes,
and that defense, I think, is going to be quite good here in Vegas here this year. All right. That's all we got for you today. That's the Cowboys right now. Lean to the under for me on the season win total with Dak over his passing yardage of 41.50.5. The best bets, at least on my end, for the Dallas Cowboys here in 2024.
Very good. And now we are going to go to Ryan McCormick and find out what is coming up next on Punchlines at noon.
Yeah, how about them Cowboys? No. So on Punchlines today, we've got some good Celtics content, being that they just won the title last night. We've got some Bryson DeChambeau content as he went back home with the U.S. Open trophy. So his neighbors gave him a little, swarmed him a little bit. And then talking about the Panthers, who could hoist the Stanley Cup for the first time later tonight. And then, as always, some good other sports content in Post with Punchlines. And then, of course, Jeff will be making another substitution this week. So
yeah, I guess
if you want more Parles, come
I'll
over at noon.
We won't have Frankie Fungo today. We'll save that for later in the
No,
week.
but we will have a Top 5 Tuesday. So it'll
That's
be
always a good sign.
a trivia for you and
We'll
Frank.
see how
so,
I
yeah.
do. I nailed the last one that I was here for. Thank you, Sammy Sosa, to say the very least on that. Even though the last one was what? It was the most home runs in a month because of Judge's Mammoth month in May. And Frank just, the one guy that neither of us knew, Frank just kept confusing with a pitcher from the 1970s, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But be on the lookout for that at Punchlines at noon coming later today. We're back tomorrow on a Wednesday. Danny Burke will join us. We'll look at the Giants. We'll look at maybe a Stanley Cup champion. If not, we'll be looking at a Game 6 in Edmonton and Florida. Plenty more to come tomorrow, Alex. See everyone then. 9 a.m. Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.